Jayden and D4vd never crossed paths in ways anyone could have predicted, yet one fateful night their lives collided in a shocking mystery that left the city questioning everything. How did a teen-S body end up inside a celebrity-S Tesla, and who was really behind the tragedy? Jayden had always been careful, the kind of teenager who planned his steps even in moments of spontaneity. That Friday night, he left his house with a sense of excitement that had been rare lately. His backpack was slung casually over one shoulder, the familiar notebook tucked inside where he kept sketches, lists, and occasional thoughts he never shared with anyone. The city around him was buzzing with life, a mix of laughter, music, and the distant hum of traffic, but Jayden barely noticed. He moved through the streets with purpose, navigating the familiar alleyways and intersections as though he had mapped every detail in his mind. The party he attended was at an apartment on the third floor of an old building in the downtown district. Lights flickered against the cracked walls, and the air was heavy with the scent of smoke and perfume. Jayden stayed mostly on the edges, observing rather than participating, nodding politely to friends and strangers alike. People came and went, and the energy in the room fluctuated like waves, high and low, drawing some into chaos, while others stayed quietly on the periphery. Jayden's attention was partly on the music and partly on the notebook he had carried with him. He flipped through its pages absent-mindedly, jotting down a word here, a sketch there, never expecting these small actions to become the last traces of normalcy in his life. By midnight, the apartment was nearly full, the sound of voices overlapping with the pulse of the bass from the speakers. Jayden left briefly to get some air, stepping onto the fire escape for a moment of quiet. From up high, he could see the glow of the city lights reflecting on wet streets, the occasional car passing, and the neon signs flickering in rhythm with the music. He breathed deeply, feeling the night air against his face, unaware that every choice he was making was being watched in ways he could not imagine. The fire escape gave him a false sense of safety, a momentary pause before the events that would change everything. When he returned to the party, someone called to him from the other side of the room, gesturing him to follow. He hesitated, sensing something slightly off but dismissing it as tiredness or nerves. He stepped out with that person, moving through the darkened streets, and the city seemed quieter now, almost holding its breath. The excitement that had been with him earlier shifted subtly into tension. Shadows moved differently here, shapes that seemed too precise, too deliberate. And yet in the dim light, Jayden's mind rationalized them away. He kept walking, trusting the familiarity of the streets and the people he had thought he knew. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes, and Jayden never returned home. His absence was first noted when his mother checked his room, the small light from his desk lamp still casting a glow over scattered papers. His phone went straight to voicemail, messages went unanswered, and the usual patterns of notifications were broken. Anxiety grew, a creeping realization that something was wrong. Friends called, retraced steps, revisited the apartment, but no one could account for where he had gone. The night stretched into early morning, every moment filled with a heavier sense of dread. The city that had felt alive and vibrant now seemed oppressive, as though it were holding back secrets that no one was ready to face. By the time the sun began to rise, the first hints of fear had solidified into a chilling certainty. Jayden was missing, and the events of the previous hours had set in motion a nightmare that no one could yet understand. The morning light revealed a city that seemed unchanged, yet everything felt different. Early commuters passed streets and alleyways without noticing the small lot tucked behind a row of abandoned warehouses. The black Tesla sitting there was sleek, almost out of place among the rusted fences and cracked pavement. At first glance it appeared ordinary, but those who came closer saw the back door slightly ajar, the faint outline of something inside that made them pause. A sharp sense of unease gripped anyone who approached, a feeling that something was wrong but impossible to articulate. The car sat like a predator waiting silently, its glossy finish reflecting the pale sunlight in a way that seemed almost unnatural. Authorities were called quickly, the first responders moving with urgency as they opened the car doors. The sight inside stunned them. Jayden's body lay across the back seat, his backpack spilled beside him and the notebook from that night resting on his chest. It was a scene that defied explanation, a mixture of innocence and horror frozen in time. The Tesla, a symbol of modern luxury and fame, had become an unwilling witness to tragedy. Investigators immediately sealed the area, blocking access to curious onlookers who had begun to gather, their whispers filling the empty spaces between the surrounding buildings. Cameras flashed and phones recorded, each image adding to a growing wave of social media speculation. The car was later confirmed to belong to D4vd, a rising star in the music world, known for his emotive songs and enigmatic persona. The revelation sent shockwaves through the city. How could a teen's body end up inside a celebrity's vehicle? Fans flooded online forums demanding answers, while journalists raced to piece together what was happening. The narrative shifted rapidly from concern for Jayden to a frenzy of accusations, speculation, and fear. Forensic teams combed the interior of the Tesla, noting fingerprints, DNA samples, and the faint scent of substances that did not belong to either Jayden or the vehicle's owner. Every discovery seemed to deepen the mystery, suggesting that the events leading up to this moment were more complex than anyone had imagined. Neighbors recalled seeing the car parked unusually late the night before, though no one had thought it suspicious at the time. Some mentioned shadowy figures around the lot, people moving quickly and deliberately in ways that drew no attention in the dark. The lot itself became a focal point, a strange arena where normal rules of observation and awareness had been suspended. Every detail, from the placement of the car to the angle of the doors, was documented meticulously, forming a map of what would later be pieced together as a chain of events too calculated to be random. As the investigation unfolded, the city became tense. People walked cautiously, aware that a tragedy of this magnitude had occurred nearby, and that danger could be closer than anyone wanted to admit. The Tesla, once a symbol of fame and modern technology, now represented mystery and fear. Its black surface seemed to absorb the questions rather than reflect answers. The world watched as authorities tried to untangle the impossible. Every step, every clue, felt like moving through a shadowed maze where nothing was as it seemed. The story of Jayden and the Tesla was no longer just about a missing teen. It was a puzzle that threatened to expose hidden obsessions, betrayals, and a dark side of human behavior that no one had expected to see in the light of day. Investigators quickly realized that solving the mystery would require following the digital breadcrumbs Jayden had left behind. His phone, recovered from the scene hours after the body was discovered, became a focal point. Every text message, call log, and app activity was analyzed, revealing a web of connections and hints that painted a fragmented picture of his last hours. A final message sent to a friend just before he vanished stood out, cryptic, brief, and tinged with unease. It suggested a meeting, a plan he believed was safe, though he did not mention with whom. The simplicity of the message contrasted sharply with the gravity of what had happened afterward, underscoring how quickly ordinary choices could lead to disaster. Cell tower data provided further insight, tracking Jayden's movements through the city in the moments leading up to his disappearance. He had walked along familiar streets, pausing briefly at intersections, yet the data revealed anomalies. There were gaps, areas where his phone appeared inactive, and unusual movements that did not align with his usual patterns. Investigators speculated that either someone had tampered with the device or Jayden had been led into places under surveillance. The technology that had once connected him to the world had become part of the mystery, a silent witness to events no one had yet fully understood. Social media activity added another layer. Posts and stories from the night before his disappearance hinted at his excitement and anticipation, yet subtle changes in his online behavior suggested unease. He had tagged locations and people he trusted, yet those same connections became potential leads for investigators. The public, following news reports and leaks, began creating theories, connecting dots that may or may not have existed. Online forums were filled with speculation, ranging from the plausible to the absurd, and investigators had to carefully separate fact from conjecture. Every post, every comment, became a small piece of a larger, terrifying puzzle. Surveillance footage became essential. Cameras along Jayden's route captured fleeting images of him walking, sometimes alone, sometimes with a shadowed figure trailing at a distance. The angles were often poor, the light insufficient, but small details stood out. A hand reaching out, a movement just behind him, a person lingering where no one should have been. Each frame required painstaking analysis, every second of footage scrutinized for anomalies. Patterns emerged, suggesting that someone had orchestrated his path, controlling where he went and when. The footage revealed not just the physical path he took, but also the careful planning behind the events that led to his final destination. As the investigation progressed, the city grew uneasy. News reports described the digital trail in fragments, leaving residents with partial understanding and increasing anxiety. The idea that someone could manipulate reality through careful observation and technology became unsettlingly real. Jayden's disappearance was no longer just a personal tragedy. It was a demonstration of how quickly control could shift, how surveillance and planning could intersect to trap someone in ways they could never anticipate. Every new piece of digital evidence pushed investigators closer to understanding what had happened, yet the full picture remained just out of reach, a haunting reminder that the modern world could hide dangers in the most ordinary places. As investigators delved deeper into Jayden's life, they began uncovering secrets that no one had suspected. His notebook, once dismissed as a collection of idle sketches and thoughts, revealed patterns of concern. Among doodles and casual notes were repeated mentions of people he felt uneasy around, names he circled multiple times, and cryptic warnings he had written for himself. Authorities discovered references to someone who had been overly interested in his movements, someone who seemed to blur the line between admiration and obsession. What had seemed like normal teenage caution now appeared prophetic, a record of instincts that, tragically, went unheeded. Further investigation into his recent contacts exposed a complex network. Jayden had met with individuals connected to the local music scene, some aspiring to rise alongside prominent figures like D4vd. Records of these encounters, both digital and in person, suggested tension beneath the surface, minor arguments, warnings, and veiled threats that at the time seemed inconsequential. But when viewed in context with the events surrounding his disappearance, they took on a chilling significance. People who had once seemed supportive were now subjects of scrutiny, their interactions with Jayden examined for signs of coercion or manipulation. Forensic analysis of the Tesla complicated the narrative even further. Traces of substances not linked to either Jayden or the vehicle's owner were discovered, along with fingerprints that didn't match anyone in the immediate circle. Investigators realized that the car had been used intentionally as part of the plan. It was not simply the place where the crime occurred. It was a tool, a carefully chosen setting designed to mislead, confuse, and manipulate the evidence trail. The luxury and fame associated with the vehicle added layers of complexity, creating assumptions in the public mind that obscured the true nature of what had happened. Every interview conducted, every past encounter revisited, revealed more about the subtle pressures Jayden faced. Friends described moments of unease, glimpses of anxiety that had gone unnoticed. Family members recounted warnings, small arguments, and moments when Jayden had mentioned feeling watched or followed. These fragments, pieced together, created a mosaic of tension and danger. Investigators began to see a calculated progression, a series of interactions that, while seemingly minor at the time, had systematically placed Jayden in a vulnerable position. Each step, each choice, led him closer to the tragic conclusion that awaited in the Tesla. As the case unfolded publicly, the story captivated the city. People were drawn not just to the mystery, but to the unsettling realization that danger often hides in plain sight. The lines between trust and betrayal, fame and manipulation, became increasingly blurred. The investigation exposed hidden obsessions, secret rivalries, and moments of negligence that collectively contributed to Jayden's fate. What had begun as a simple disappearance evolved into a complex narrative of human behavior, one that challenged assumptions about safety, trust, and the seemingly ordinary interactions that can conceal lethal intent. By the time the authorities pieced together these hidden connections, it was clear that the path leading to the Tesla had been paved with careful intent, and that the tragedy had roots in both the visible and invisible forces surrounding Jayden's life. The final pieces of the investigation revealed a truth that shocked everyone involved. Months of careful analysis, interviews, and forensic work gradually pointed to a disturbing conclusion. Jayden's death had been orchestrated by someone who had monitored him closely, anticipating his every move. This person had exploited Jayden's trust, the routines he followed, and the relationships he valued, using them to manipulate him into a situation he could not escape. The Tesla, far from being merely the scene of a crime, had been deliberately chosen as the centerpiece of the scheme, a vehicle that symbolized influence and distraction while concealing the danger within. Authorities discovered that the person behind the plan had leveraged connections in the music and social circles, creating an appearance of normalcy that masked their true intentions. Witnesses who initially seemed unrelated were revealed to have played small but critical roles, guiding Jayden subtly toward the moment that would end his life. Every interaction, every message, every movement had been calculated to maintain the illusion of safety while ensuring he was isolated when it mattered most. It became clear that the tragedy was not a random act of violence, but the result of premeditated manipulation, a sequence of choices executed with precision. The forensic evidence, once puzzling, now told a coherent story. DNA traces, fingerprints, and other physical clues indicated the presence of multiple individuals, yet they aligned with the broader pattern of orchestration rather than a spontaneous attack. The Tesla itself, analyzed down to the smallest detail, revealed that the perpetrator had been careful to minimize visible traces while still ensuring the vehicle would be discovered in a way that confused authorities and captured public attention. It was a chilling display of planning, a reminder that appearances can be deceptive and that even the most ordinary settings can hide extraordinary danger. The motive, when finally uncovered, added another layer of shock. Jealousy, ambition, and a desire for control intersected, revealing how personal obsession can escalate into lethal consequences. The person responsible had been motivated not by random malice, but by a calculated intent to manipulate circumstances to their advantage, using Jayden's youth, trust, and vulnerability against him. The case exposed the dark undercurrents that often exist behind the glittering surface of fame and influence, showing how ambition can twist admiration into something destructive. In the aftermath, the city grappled with the reality of what had occurred. Families, friends, and fans were left to mourn Jayden while also confronting unsettling truths about trust, safety, and the hidden dangers lurking within seemingly ordinary interactions. The Tesla became a symbol not of luxury or fame, but of how quickly lives can be altered when manipulation and obsession intersect with opportunity. Jayden's story remained a haunting reminder of the fragility of life, the unpredictability of human behavior, and the devastating consequences that can follow when secrets, ambition, and hidden intentions collide. The tragedy resonated far beyond the immediate circle, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who followed the case and sparking a conversation about vigilance, awareness, and the unseen forces that can shape destiny.